Just went to measure up the new panel to draw the cut line, and I forgot about this little piece here. So it's just a little fairing on the other side. As you can see, it's not there. I do have it. I took it off years ago when I started this job. So I just thought, because I just show my method, or whatever I did, I suppose, of how I break spot welds. So when I did the sills on the car, probably a good description if we just go to the dummy one I'd ever used, all along this flange here on the side of the car. Well, when they built them, they just spot welded the seams together. So when you take the thing apart, you have to undo all those spot welds. Well, that's what I did. That's the proper way of doing it, as far as I'm concerned, not what old mate on the left-hand side did. So you can get what's called spot weld drills, and that's what these are. And if you can see, this particular one's just got a little, a real small little point there, and the idea of it is that you are just drilling away the spot. This one does a similar sort of thing. It's got a spring loaded, obviously, and it just goes in and you force it on, and it will cut away the outer circumference. You don't want to go into the inner panel, if you will. From memory, it's been a while since I've done this. I mean, it was years ago I started doing this job and put it away for a while, but this one was the better one. So I'm just going to have a crack at this, get my drill, drill this aside, and then just get a cold chisel and separate that, and I'll just show you what breaking a spot weld looks like, if it's of any benefit to anyone. Righto, so drill that away. A bit of a slip with the drill, no big deal, but the idea is you're drilling away the section on the outer skin, or the skin side you want to access. You want to drill away, the spot. So, you can use a cold chisel. I use this scraper. This poor thing's had an absolute flogging, so if I had a spare hand, I'd show you with a hammer, but I don't. So I'm just going to get in there with a hammer and pop this thing off, and I'll just show you how it breaks away a spot weld. Righto, so drill that away. A bit of a slip with the drill, no big deal, but the idea is you're drilling away the section on the outer skin, or the skin side you want to access. You want to drill away, the spot. So, you can use a cold chisel. I use this scraper. This poor thing is an absolute flogging, so if I had a spare hand, I'd show you with a hammer, but I don't. So I'm just going to get in there with a hammer and pop this thing off, and I'll just show you how it breaks away a spot weld. Righto, here we go. So that's popped off. Could have drilled it a bit deeper. You can see it's just a microscopic bit of metal there, and that was the centre of the spot weld there. So it's not the neatest thing in the world. Don't get too worried about it if you don't do the neatest job in the world, because it's underneath the car. It's all hidden. So the idea is to drill all the way through to the skin, and then you do a weld fill. So you put that back onto the new skin and fill that hole in. So I'll just grind that out a little bit. I'll go into it later. Now, I didn't need to do that either. There's no real need. I mean, this is just a little fairing. I could have just cut that off there and then put a couple of spot welds and hold it in position. But I just thought, point of the exercise, I'll just show what that looks like. In fact, this one down here, I think I'll cut that. Yeah, I think I'll just cut that one off and just spot it back on later. No big deal. Alright, so there's the new panel just clipped into position with a pair of vice grips. And so what I'll do is I'll draw a line along here, and that'll give us our cut line. So now obviously it's not sitting exactly at the right height, because that should line up with the bottom of the car. but it'll be pretty close and it'll go back on. So I'll pin it in better, and obviously it's not sitting exactly there. So I'll spend some more time to line it up more carefully. But at the end of the day, basically that's what you're doing. You're putting your blank on, drawing a line. That's what I did last time, and it come out just fine. So we'll do it again. Cheers. Alrighty, just another little update. I've cut the line for the new panel. Got really lucky because you can see the old seam line from the other type of panel I fitted. The Rare Spares one is a little bit longer, so good. So it's not the same weld line, so that means we're going to have a nice strong fit. And the other thing is, so this tail section, which is the why I'm doing this, because that's all old metal and full of rust. I just thought I'd show you a couple of these things. So you can see that was a spot weld through there, and it let go. And sometimes when you're trying to identify these spot welds, it looks really messy, and you might drill out something that's actually not a spot weld. That one actually was. I didn't go through it all the way. Got the chisel in and cold chisel in and separated the metal in there. And the other thing is, just to show how these old cars are made, this is factory. No one's ever been here before, and they used filler back then for all sorts of things. So, you know, if it looks messy when you're doing it, if someone else is doing this, my experience has been, don't panic. It's all right, it'll all clean up. But you can see that's popped off down there now. And that was where a spot weld has missed by the looks of it. And I found a lot of these on the car where they've just, you know, they go along with the gun back in the day. And don't forget it was built in the 70s. So, you know, it's not exactly perfect. You can see that was a pretty good line of spot welds. So, geez, I might rethink about doing that again too. I'm not sure. You see that metal. Anyway, long and short of it, it's not that bad. So anyway, spot welds, and you can see there's one there. I was going to try and see if I can get this wedged in, hit it with a hammer so you can see what it looks like when it actually pops off, but I'm lacking hands and assistance, so it's probably not going to work. That's probably looking ugly. Righto, just thought I'd show you this as well. There's other ways to skin a cat. So good old die grinder. It's just a cheap one, and the drill sort of pinched off to the side there, so that's all right. I did a heap of breaking spot welds with these little devices, so not real cheap to buy the tips, but you probably don't need to buy a whole kit. But you can sort of use it like a drill and get in and just get that top layer of metal off, and I'll do that in a minute when I open the other hand back, and grind that away. So the other thing is you can use just a stone grinder as well. Depending on the size of it, can be handy for knocking a bit of weld off. So, you know, like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's not just a way of doing anything really. So I'll do that, and then uncut all the welding I did under here before because it was rubbish. Anyway, onto it. Good boy, Ted. I don't know if you can see that, but just ground that away with that little die grinder, and off it went. So it was a lot neater. When I think about it, like I said, it was years ago I started this job, and during the reasons the car, you know, I half started, and like a lot of guys, and didn't move on. So now we're moving on. But long and short of it, the die grinder, from memory, when I think about it, was the better way of doing things. So, you know, you can get a little die grinder, you know, from most of the suppliers. That one's a super cheap one. I think it was about 40 bucks. And no, it's not the quality of the other one I got, a little Kawasaki here. That's a great bit of kit. I mean, that's industrial quality, but for home, I mean, this thing's had an absolute hiding. Seriously, and still going strong. So bang for your buck, you know. So anyway, yeah, and you can get the tips from all sorts of shops, like even our local home hardware sells those sort of what are they called, die grinder tips. So anyway, now we can move on, finally get this panel off. You're still here, mate. Where the other two go? Only got one supervisor tonight. This is Ted, everyone. Say hello to Ted. Good boy. Righto, so this is just really roughly putting it into place. So there's the old one there, we've cut him out. And you can see why I wanted to do this, I suppose. Point of case, you can see this is old skin, new skin, and I'd try to patch it, and look, epic fail. So cut my losses, move along, and you can see the old weld line as well. It penetrated, but you know, then there was gaps. Mind you, it's probably not that bad for a first attempt with a cheap ass welder, but anyway, I've decided I wasn't happy with it. So, and mainly because this area here, and you can still see it's still rust. It's just not good enough. Just on the subject of these old cars, what I was looking at before, I thought was a spot weld. So it's a bit of braze. So, you know, they spot them together and they used a bit of braze, and then they bogged it up. You know, we romance about these old girls, how well they were built, but really they weren't. They really weren't built that well at all. They just look cool and drive good. But anyway, my personal opinion, it's my car, I'll criticise if I want. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not worried about that gap at all. That'll stitch weld up pretty well, I think. Not too bad. So I can always take a bit more of an edge off there, bring that up. That's going to be good for an amateur job, and I am an amateur, I'm not a panel beater. I reckon that'll be all right. So that's going to be a lot better, particularly as it's got this piece in here. So all good, dinner time. Oh, we've got another supervisory staff turn up. Where's the other one? Goodness me. All right, kids. Right. So I did some clean up inside the car. Just corrosion, blah, blah, blah. Clean up the old welds. I'm trying to get my thoughts here. I've got it all wrong. But anyway, I might have to cut some losses here. This is the new panel going on, and whether in transit between when it first got freighted to me or when we've moved house, it's just not sitting right. Now, I might be able to spot weld here, that lines up there, and then try and manipulate it so it lines up there, then, you know, push it back out as we go along and go, you know, spot in the critical areas, then a couple of bits as we go along, and then we've got another problem down here, and that's just way out. That was bent. Just the thing wasn't straight. Now, it says on the sticker, some adjustment might be required. The other thing is, I have done a bit of welding in here, but I just don't think it's that different. You know, the thing's just, it's just not right. Now, the other one I put on just didn't have as much problems. I mean, that's not bogged. That is purely as I welded it. You know, and it's pretty good. That won't need that much filler. Except the dent I put in the car, but anyway, that's another story. So I don't know that it's going to be possible to put a zot here, for example, so weld it when my thumbnail is there, and then try and create that bend again. I just don't think it's possible. I think it's going to look god awful. It's just not right. You know, at the end of the day, it's like it's too long as well. So you can see where the bend is, and it just, like, this panel hasn't changed length. So I think there's a problem with this panel. It's just not right. I just don't think I can. Anyway, I'll ring the supplier tomorrow and order a new one, I suppose. I mean, I've had the thing for 4 years in stock, so I think they're going to tell me where to go and how to jump and how far to jump as well. But oh well, such is life. It's a first world problem. But honestly, you know, you look at that lines up pretty good. In fact, that's a little bit proud if you look at it carefully. So, you know, that curvature's right. Well then, how is it the thing's so bloody long? And I just don't think you're going to be able to get that to bend. I mean, maybe it's because that curvature's it's too tight, or fair dinkum. Happens. Anywho, so it's just doesn't sit right at all. Compare the other one. The other one cut really good. Hence my confidence with this panel, but it was short-lived. All right. Time for a feed. Righto. Time to bite the bullet and weld this in. Got a new panel. The old one, as I discussed before, just really wasn't happy with it. This one is marginally better. So, plan of attack is just going to attack this piece here, because that lines up smooth, and that's still lined up smooth. And then if I can tack that there, you can squeeze that in, or I can squeeze that in, and it lines up nice still. But then if I don't weld that first, we're going to lose that edge. So the plan of attack is to, righto, start on what I think is an important curve that'd be obvious to see. We need that right. And then as I go along, just tack it in. It'll have to be pushed a bit out from the inside, because they're not straight. These panels are not straight. The car's not straight. But that's all right. That's what we grind and fill for. Well, I do anyway. And then I'm going to have to bend this around. I can't go up any higher. And I thought initially, because it seems just a little bit long again, this one's not as bad as the other one. I thought, well, maybe if I went higher, because obviously that's going to make it longer, because you're cutting away at the arc. But the bend point here is already high, and coincidentally the other one ended up a little bit high as well. So going up higher is not the solution. So, you know, you do have to manipulate these things, and these old cars are not made perfect. They're just not. If you're hard to see on film, I know, but the curvature on the right hand guard was significantly different to the curvature on the left hand guard, which has got a much tighter curve here, you know, compared to the other side. It's just, you know, standards weren't that tight back in the day when they pressed these things, clearly. So that's all right. We'll bite the bullet. What's the worst going to happen? Cut it out and do it again for the third time? All right, we'll have a crack. Before I start this, I thought I'd go through a couple of tips that might be useful to someone out there. I don't know. Clamps. These come in a set of 3 from Supercheap, and I've ended up buying 3 sets. They're like $8. These little vice grips, handy, and I've used them to hold the panel in position to start the job. I think I used 10 of them when I put this sill on. Worked out really well, that one. So just cheap way of doing business. I'm pretty sure they're $8. I'm pretty sure they still sell them. I could be wrong, but yeah. The other thing is, so obviously it's the weld line. I've just gone along with a Dotco. I call it Dotco. You can call it a Scotch pad, and just cleaned off the paint to just improve my chances of getting a decent weld. Third tip is the quarter panel that just I wasn't really happy with. Like I said, it's probably got bent in travel or between moves when we moved to where we are now. And so I'm going to use it as a test piece to do some spot welding. So we'll just see how it goes. Another thing is, for the home welder, amateur, me, gas weld is where I get this from. Exchange bottles, I think it's $350 to buy your bottle straight up, something like that. But then it's $99. Well, it took me nearly 4 years to empty one, and there's no lease with it. I used to have a deal with a gas company, or I won't mention, but you know, it was costing me more a year than a refill costs, and that was only CO2. So these things are a bargain, and I know other companies do them as well. Bunnings do it, so, but I get that from Gaswell, and it's just a really cheap option. What you can get for a home workshop now is amazing. Using 0.6 wire, I can't weld with 0.8 on sheet. I'm just not that good. So I might regret buying the 5-pounder again. 5 kilos, sorry. This machine seems to operate better with the smaller drums. I mean, it holds this thing, but I don't know, we'll see how it goes. With the 0.8, it does have a few feed issues. and that's the biggest problem you get with MIG welder, is my understanding, or has been from my experience with all the ones I've had 3, is feed issues. This Lincoln's a good bit of kit butt, and when I use 0.6 with a 1 kilo reel, it just gives no problems at all. So we'll see how I go with this new reel. But the 0.8, if the tube isn't nice and so I've dropped it nice and straight, you get a tight bend in it. Well, not even a tight bend, like a small curve. With the 0.8 and the 5 kilo roll, it'll have feed issues. So we'll see how it goes with the 5 kilo and the 0.6 wire, which I'm using for this one, which I've just bent the end of. So I'll cut that off and get going, see how we go. Right, just had a bit of a play before we get going here. So this was setting D4, and you can see it's pretty high build up, which isn't ideal. And if you can see here, I'll point to the exact one, but it did penetrate, but I don't know if it's penetrating enough. So then the second lot I went for, I'm trying to think now, 5.5, and F, and I'll just explain that. Numbers of speed, letters of voltage on this machine anyway, and then I pulled it back to pretty much from where I remember, 4.5 and what we've got, echo and a half. So between E and F, and there's the results when we had the higher setting. Nice and flat, but I think it was burning too hard, and it was getting that nice sizzle sound as well. Same with this. So the first one's always a little bit rough, but then it come along and it was just nice bacony sound, as they say, and it's not too raised. So see, it's flatter there, but I felt it was a bit too hot, so I'm going to go with this setting here. As you can see, this one's just bubbling up, and you know, you want it to penetrate the metal and flow into the metal as best you can. Now obviously there's a good situation because I'm welding flat, and you know, it's a lot more difficult when I'm going to be welding vertical. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. The last one turned out alright, so anyway. Okay, so just sort of reinforcing my last bit around the back of the car. So I've stitched this up along here, and no, it's not the prettiest weld in the world, but whatever. And you can, it's hot, but so I've just welded this, but you can feel, well, I can feel that's not even. You can see that little piece there. So I've welded it as close to either side, because I'm going to give that a little hit now with a brass drift and a hammer, and I'll see how that comes up. The rest of it is pretty good, and that was, I was talking about welding through holes before. There was a lightning hole in that or whatever, and then hard surface, so I've just filled that hole in. Need to do it a bit better. I was doing it one-handed, but long and short of it, that's what a reset weld, I think you call it. I need to go and look up a book. It's going back in my studies, but anyway, it's coming along. So the point of this was stitch it to the point where it's no longer flush, and I'm just going to give it a hit like I did with this corner. That come up well, and I'll refilm after I hit it and see if I've buggered it or not. Alright, so just give that a bit of a touch up with a brass drift, and that's pretty close now. So there's nothing in here that, you know, more weld, bit of grind, and then a bit of bog at the end. This thing should come up alright. So now I'm just gonna, I won't film again until I've finished stitching it up and started the grind process. Yeah, no, that'll do. Obviously I've got to do the same down here, so, and that's just a matter, I'll go along and stitch it up on that seam. The new panel is a bit longer than the old one, so that's all right. And a bit more manipulation here. And the car had a heap of filler in here too, out of factory, so that's just how they were. But it'll look good in the end. Alright, so I've used the term reset weld a couple of times. I just thought I'd explain it so people don't think, what is he on about? So what it is a term that relates to aircraft structure. And no, I'm not an aircraft welder, and we're not repairing aeroplanes, but it's just one of my old textbooks. And what it is, you'd had an inner tube, smaller, outer tube, and you wanted to do a repair, you would drill little holes and do a reset weld. So I'm using that same rationale, if you will, on the car. So the fender, for example, so the sort of inner wheel arch and the outer skin is spot welded. There's one, there's one, there's one. Now, obviously, you get your new panel, it doesn't have any. So using that drill I talked about before, the spot weld remover drill, I've drilled a hole just through the outer skin, and I'm gonna effectively do a reset weld. It's no big deal. It's just a way of doing a spot weld that's probably a bit stronger, and it'll give me a nice effective result rather than trying to just tack along the little welds and on this little edge here, because it'll probably just burn out, to be honest with you. Pretty much done. Not too bad. It's not the best thing in the world, so I got wayward there, like I said last night. I've gone through with a torch and had a look, and there's virtually, I think there's one there and there's another one here, so I can't remember now, one tiny little pinhole where you can see light coming through. So I went through, marked it with a pencil this afternoon, and just went and re-welded over. So no, it's not the prettiest looking thing in the world, but once it's had a bit more of a grind and some paint and bog, you'll never know. Pretty happy the way that ended up. Actually, it was better than the old one, so that's good. Same with that. That ended up being pretty good. If you remember, I was trying to put the panel on. It was just way out, but bit of manipulation, like they say in the sticker. And I'm not too unhappy with this whole thing. It'll be all right. And, you know, there's probably someone out there who's a panel beater looking at this going, you're an idiot, whatever. You know, this isn't a show car. This is my backyard job. So anyway, as far as I'm concerned, we're doing all right, and we'll continue. Righto, so we're about to pack up for the day because the supervisors have come in and informed me that it's time to throw the ball and have a beer. Isn't that right, kids? All right. So just where we're at, finished welding now, pretty much finished grinding through the arch here and all the rest of it. Did all the weld underneath, just little, not spot welds, but sort of join welds from the outer lip to the inner lip, and, you know, mimics what a spot weld used to be, in my mind anyway. Found the little fairing for the left-hand side, happy about that. I couldn't remember where I put it, there it is. So that's on all right. Same with the right-hand one. It's going to give that a little bit of clean up now and hit with some kill rust primer or something similar, and call that a day. And then we move on, and I've got to repair up in the C-pillar to do. I think you can see that there. Yes, you can. So I've got to do an insert repair there. So I'll quickly grind this off and give the place a bit of a broom and go and throw the ball, because it's all important, isn't it, Ted? Good boy.